Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of New York Giants Corner here at Toilets to Titles. It is Wednesday night, a little after 8 o'clock, February 1st. Yeah, when we made past January, we're into February. I am joined by my co-host Joe, aka at Drop Elise JC. Joe, how's it going, my friend?
It's going good, man. It's that bittersweet time of year. Only one game left of the NFL season, which stinks. Although looking forward to what should be a close Super Bowl. But it's kind
Yeah.
of cool, especially with what we're going to talk about tonight from a Giants perspective, to just kind of it's a different angle of rehashing this season. Which as a Giants fan, this is the first time in 6 or 7 years where in February we've actually wanted to rehash a Giants season. So, they say there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat or whatever that saying is. And this is just another way
Yep.
to be able to rehash what was a pleasantly surprising New York Giants 2022 season.
I know the saying well because my day job I skin cats. So I talk New York Giants football at night, and during the day I skin cats. I'm a cat skinner. So no, but hey, man, I know it feels weird. Like usually by this time, by February 1st, I think I know like I'm probably like 300 players deep in terms of like the upcoming draft class and who I take for the Giants, and I have it all planned out for the Giants round by round. And no, I have a lot of reading to do and a lot of videos to watch. So, but it's a great feeling. But it does stink that our team's not going to be in the Super Bowl next week. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do? But we did have two great, two really good. One really good conference championship game on the AFC side, and one that was, a mess on the NFC, I guess, in the NFC side. But I think there was a lot that went wrong there for San Francisco. That wasn't necessarily their fault. I mean, losing your third string quarterback who was looking like a Pro Bowler, is Jesus. I mean, how much next man up can you do?
It's really they are our Giants teams over the years have been
Yeah,
snake bit with injuries that
and
probably
they have been.
every position other than quarterback. For the 49ers, every year to go through this at quarterback
Yeah,
and running back and every position, and the fact
yeah,
that they're still viable every year is really a
it's
testament
incredible,
to
man.
them. But to your point, I mean, as soon I thought Philly was going to overwhelm them a little bit anyway. In
Mhm.
Philly, that's a tough atmosphere to be in for a young quarterback. But once Purdy went out, the writing was on the wall there.
Oh
Um,
yeah, oh
Philly was
yeah.
just
That was
bullied
it.
them.
There was no more dipping into the well, to get to get any surprise quarterbacks there. But yeah, I had Philadelphia. I thought they were going to win fairly convincingly, but I could say like 10 points or something like that. Listen, if Purdy had been healthy, that could have been a different game. I still think Philadelphia would have won. I think they're the best team in the NFL,
Yeah,
and
they're well
I don't,
rounded.
oh yeah, well run, absolutely. And that Kansas City Cincinnati game again,
We
wild
needed it.
against.
We needed it. After
Yeah,
the NFL has had, we talked about it. Not every NFL game, it felt like went down to the wire during the regular season. Every
yeah,
fantasy matchup went down to Monday night. And then all of a sudden you get to the playoffs and we only had like one good game every round.
yeah.
We badly needed that KC Cincy game, and we got what we needed. Let me ask you a real quick question on that. What is your view? Because I mean, there is a lot of conversation about officiating coming out of this weekend.
Mhm.
And there were certainly some bad calls in that Cincinnati game. But what is
Yeah.
your view on that late hit on Mahomes at the end? Like, I mean, certainly it was a late hit. However,
I thought.
do you?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. You know where I'm going with it. As a referee, do you have to be able to have the wherewithal to think, if I throw this flag right now, it is a late hit. But if I
Mhm.
throw this flag right now, I'm pretty much deciding this game because we're going from a 55-yard field goal to a 40-yard field goal.
Yeah.
Or what is your view on that?
You know what? It's a great question, man. And my feeling is, hey, Rich, let's go. What's going on, Frito Bandito? Oh, he's saying it was a late hit,
Yeah,
but but at the same time, refs can't decide the
that's what I'm
game.
getting at exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you, D. Now I hear you, man. You know what? Listen, I agree. If I'm a ref, I want to let the players play. However, I don't know if you let that go on. Is like, do you have
I
to let
know.
every sideline hit like that go on? Like,
Yeah,
ultimately, it's on the player, And I would say even the player. What was his name again? I think the rookie out of Texas or Texas. Oh,
yeah,
Asai,
yep.
Asai. Good, promising player, man. I like him a lot. you could tell he was, he was heartbroken. There he was, taking the questions with B.J. Hill, former Giant by his side, acting like just like the big brother in there. It was a really cool scene, actually. You
I
could tell
agree.
Osai was devastated because he knows that he messed up.
Yeah.
He knows that it wasn't like really a bad call. It was just he messed up. And listen, the ref can give leeway. There was a hit too against Burrow that was very similar. He
Yeah.
was like clearly out of bounds, and it wasn't called. I don't know why. Like there needs to be consistency
Well,
there,
you
but
got
I don't think
you got
there's.
the drama. Mahomes is limping already, right? So, like, I mean,
Yeah,
it's just the drama of that play right there at that time was a perfect storm for that call to be
yeah.
made. And you got to give Mahomes credit. The fact that he legged that out with a high ankle sprain and he got the first down anyway. And
Yeah.
I mean, you got to give him a lot of credit too. But we needed
Oh
that
yeah.
game. That was phenomenal. That
What
really,
did you think? What was your thought about that? About that? Same question back at you.
yeah. I'm one to say I prefer the refs to not decide the game, but to me it's
Hmm.
hard to not call that one because it
Hmm.
was pretty like it wasn't a bad hit because it was overly violent or aggressive, but it was
Hmm.
clearly a late hit. I mean, Mahomes was already out of bounds.
Hmm.
Um so to me that one was so clearly a late hit, it's hard to not call that. Also, it's a late hit on a quarterback, which is like I would be more frustrated if it was like a bad holding call. That would really piss me off. Like when you get these
Yeah.
phantom holding calls on what would be
Oh
a
yeah.
40-yard
Or
touchdown or something.
or a complete like obvious holding call
Yes.
that's not called.
Yes. Or a
You know,
horrible interference or something like that.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
tough.
I,
I
I
will.
agree with you. Like a horrible interference call, that would piss me off even more.
Yeah.
Like that, listen, man, it's like it's tough. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have called it because I didn't think it was all that egregious. Maybe it was. Listen, it was he had a rough landing.
He did have,
Mahomes.
yeah. And again, the
Yeah, he had.
drama of him already limping, like I think it all feeds into the call being made. If he's
Yeah,
100% healthy and he's not limping all game and the refs aren't watching him limp all game, maybe they don't
yeah.
make that call.
And listen, and something I brought up before, people say, will often say they'll scream, "Well, you got to be consistent. You got to be
Yeah.
consistent." Listen, refs then
Human
then
error.
take the referee element out of it,
Yep.
or have just the refs up in the sky,
Yep.
watching from multiple angles and everything, and get it perfect. What can I tell you? But it's the human element. I don't think anything's rigged, and I'm not saying that's what you're
Right. Yeah.
alluding to, Joe. But you hit people screaming, "It's rigged! It's rigged! It's rigged!" And listen, it's a human element, man, and things are judgment calls, and what are you going to do? But
So before we
listen,
move to the Giants, let me ask you one last one and then we'll get off this. So Super
yeah,
Bowl, Super Bowl coming up. What do you got?
Eagles.
Yeah.
I'm not giving Kansas City a chance. I'll be honest with you. I don't think like it could be close in score, but I think say like if they win by like 7 points at the end, it'll seem closer than it really was. Maybe they'll be up by like 10, 13 the entire game. Like I if I think honestly, I think if San Francisco, well, Jesus, Purdy was injured. I don't think the AFC teams can match up with
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 Philly.
Philadelphia. I don't think they would have matched up with San Francisco either. If Purdy was healthy, I don't think they would have either. I had whoever won the NFC Championship game, I
Yeah.
had winning the Super Bowl. I'm going to
It,
stick by that. How about
I
you?
think Mahomes has to be healthier than he was against Cincinnati. I don't think he
Yeah,
can come into this game limping the way he was immediately in that last game. Because to your point, Philadelphia is just going to put too much pressure on him and be too physical. But it's also hard for me. I know it's hard for me though too because Mahomes is playing so good. So right, like who's
yeah,
the best
yeah.
player on the court in a basketball game? That's the team you like. Who's the best player? As great as Jalen Hurts has been this year, the best football player on that field
Hmm.
is a healthy Patrick
Oh,
Mahomes,
a hundred
not
percent.
not a high ankle sprain
And it's
Patrick
not even
Mahomes, but a
close.
healthy one.
And it's not even close. It's not Hurts. It's not AJ Brown. That's nothing
Yeah,
against Hurts. It's not
yeah,
AJ Brown. It's not Miles Sanders, Devontae Smith. It is by a mile. It is Patrick Mahomes, and I agree with you 100%. And listen, don't get me wrong. Maybe I'm making it sound a little too strongly. Even for me, is I think the Eagles are going to win, even if it's by a point, 3 points, whatever. But I will never discount a team that has a quarterback like
yeah.
Mahomes, just like I never, ever, ever discounted Tom Brady led team.
Yep,
Never,
yep,
ever.
that's fair. I think
And
the
you've got
no. Go ahead.
and you have the combination of Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they're a good team. They're a good team, but that Eagles defense, like I said, people talk about Hurts and they talk about the offense. That defense is real, man.
Yeah.
That's a real defense, solid through and through. Period.
And Kansas City's got other like we don't know what their wide receiver situation is either going into this game. Tony might not play.
Mhm.
Hardman might not play.
Yeah, I'm not
There's
even
another.
crazy about Hardman either.
I
Anyway,
know,
I think
I
he made
know,
the
I
Pro Bowl,
know.
but I don't really.
Yeah,
If I'm the Philadelphia secondary, which is super stacked, I'm not worried about McCall. Tyreek Hill would have been a different story, but I
yeah,
wouldn't be worried about McCall Hardman. I mean, listen, Mahomes has got the capability of of winning any Super Bowl against any team. He's that good. He's the equalizer. But man, Philadelphia is such a stacked team, and I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas City won, but there's just no way. I got to go with Philadelphia in that
yeah. I think Philly wins somewhat of a close game, but I think they take that. They're just so
game.
balanced
Yeah,
all
yeah.
around. And
I think
as
it'll
much
be
as I hate
close.
the Eagles, I'm really happy that the NFC East is back.
Yeah,
So
I
as much as I
agree.
don't want them to win the Super Bowl, if they
Oh,
do
I'm not
win it,
rooting for them. Yeah,
no, I'm not either. But if they do win it, like I love what that signifies for the NFC East. I will say
I
that.
agree. I'm with you, man. I grew up with this in the '80s, and thank God, the Giants were one of the teams that were really good. Us and the Redskins. The Cowboys were like on the downturn at that point, and Philadelphia was like Philadelphia back then in the 1980s, at least in the
Yeah.
mid to late '80s, or the mid 1980s. They were like how Washington is now. Like they were irrelevant, you know. But man, it made your team better. To have to go up and beat Dallas, which we haven't done, to have to go up against Philadelphia and who we rarely beat, have to do that. Those are great hurdles to get
Yep.
through. So I like it, man. I'm just I say bring it and just hopefully it makes our team better. Obviously we're not on that level. We got a little ways to go, but but we did have a draft class. And we're going to review real quick. Let me get through the bells and whistles real quick. Please hit that like button, subscribe, give us that 5-star Apple review. Why? Because we deserve it. Where you can follow the show: Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean, Facebook, and Spotify. And we have a great website that has all of our content, toiletsatitles.com, has all of our videos, articles. We cover fantasy football, NFL, college football, draft content. We got a team of like 5 guys down at Mobile, Alabama, the Senior Bowl right now, scouting out players. That's exciting. It's our first time that we've had our own delegation down there, our
Yeah.
own
Very cool.
in-house experts down there. So we're going to have even more draft content coming up. It's just going to be a wonderful year. And patreon.com/toilets to titles. If you go there, you can learn how you can further support the show. And I want to say thank you to our current Patreon supporters. Because of your donations, when you contribute to us through Patreon, is a big reason of why we were able to send a team of our best college like knowledgeable guys down there this year. It helped out a lot. So thank you so much. It helps us just produce more and more content. All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes over here. The purpose of this is we're closing out the 2022 season. I don't want to bore everyone. I don't want to bore Joe over here. Poor drop the leash JC. Thinking we're going to keep recap, but it's a worthy season to rehash because we've been starving for wins and good stuff to celebrate. But I do want to just talk about as a recap our draft class. Most of the players, some of these players, we're not going to spend too much time on. You know, how we felt like they did, how do we see them projecting going forward, what made us excited or what made us concerned. We could talk about all that. We could talk about just one aspect for a player. We're going to take it where the wind takes us, we're going to go. So our first round picks, man, this was an awesome first round. I remember draft night. That was awesome, man. Like, man,
Yeah.
Kayvon Thibodeau fell to us. Evan Neal fell to us. Like, oh my God. I think the only thing I would have changed was taking Sauce if he fell to us and Kayvon. Fifth and seventh, I would have. Nothing against Evan Neal because we needed a right tackle anyway. Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal. Any thoughts you want to lead off with at all, or
Just exactly what you were leading off with. We got the perfect storm of of how they fell, because I think we were going into that
manna
thinking,
from heaven,
let's get one of those two. We were going to be
right?
relieved if we got one of those two, and we
Mm-hmm.
didn't think we were going to get Kayvon. So to get
Yeah,
both of them right off the bat was kind of like a holy shit moment for the Giants.
yeah.
That was my initial thought. And then real quick, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you for the deep stuff. But then on the other side of that, so that's the initial thought when it happens last April. But now my most fresh thought is we had Kayvon Thibodeau impacting the Giants playoff win in the fourth quarter of that Minnesota game. And what does that really mean? It's bringing us back to the fact that we won the 2007, the 2011 Super Bowls with a defensive line that was absolutely unstoppable, and that was the only defensive line in the NFL that could solve Tom Brady in those years. And it was because of the pressure that they administered with that front four. And to see Kayvon Thibodeau 2 weeks ago forcing fumbles and making plays in pivotal times in the fourth quarter, that was like, wow, you know what? We're getting somewhere now. We are getting somewhere now.
Yeah, I remember it was just a few years ago, maybe just even 2 years ago, before we didn't have a Kayvon Thibodeau, we did not have an Azeez Ojulari. We had we had a nice interior front of Leonard Williams, um, Dalvin Tomlinson, who I think is in Minnesota now. Minnesota loves our defensive tackle, so
Yeah.
we don't resign.
Hankins
And then and we had Linval Joseph. They had
and Joseph too.
for a long time. He was great. And so we had an interior line of Leo, Dalvin Tomlinson for 1 year. This is we had Dexter Lawrence, and we had B.J. Hill as a backup too, who's now like a great starter for Cincinnati. Good for him
But
on
that
the
was a better
Bengals.
run defensive line than a pass,
Right.
right?
The thing is, we didn't have edges at the time. We weren't signing
Yeah.
free agents, and also they just weren't there to pick unless we took Josh Allen, the edge rusher, over Daniel Jones. But but we didn't really, that was a really good edge draft class too, 2019 when we took Daniel Jones. We didn't take Josh Allen. We missed out on Brian Burns, I think, by one, maybe two picks. Who went like 2 picks before Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence. I know this is about, it's not about our young veterans. It's about the guys who played for the first time this year. Dexter Lawrence is basically a Pro Bowl nose tackle now. But my point being that it wasn't all that long ago. We had no edge presence
Yeah.
whatsoever, zero. We probably had some cast-offs from the Cardinals from one of our previous defensive coordinators, So we were just foaming at the mouth for that edge, and here he comes, falls right to us. And like you said, Joe, he was freaking impactful. And you saw it in the Minnesota game, but you saw it in many games this season. There were some games where, he was kind of invisible at least. But I'll tell you, there were also a lot of games. I'll tell you, there were like at least 3, maybe 4 games where he was held clearly multiple times. And I'm not saying this is a homer. It was like clearly held multiple times in like 3 or 4 games. I forgot which ones exactly. And this is earlier on in the season too, when he really first came back from that injury. But he had, only 4 sacks or whatever. I don't really care about that so much. I thought overall, I'll worry about the sacks later because I do think
Yeah.
as a stud edge presence drafted at number 5, you do have to like eventually get up to, let's say, like
Double
8.5,
digits. Yeah.
9,
Yep. Yep.
10,
Yep.
let's say 10 sacks, it depends on what the defensive coordinator wants you to do as well. But yeah, let's say 10 sacks. You got to get up there. But for first year, for on a whole, on a defense that has holes too, especially the linebacking core. That's what I'm talking about. Um, in terms of playing the run, like I thought he had a really good year, and it was impactful, and we
And the
needed that.
energy. He brought an
Yeah,
energy when he was on the field that they lacked without him.
there's a presence that he brings that I like a lot that this team needed. He's not like an alpha. And people often say, well, Giants don't want guys, they don't want players on their team that just like talk crap or talk smack. And I don't think that's it. I don't think they mind guys who talk. I just don't think they want guys who act like idiots, like maybe like a like a Kadarius Toney if the guy's not practicing. I don't know what
Yep.
the story was there. I'm dying to know what the full story was with Tony, but stuff like that, or just like even OBJ, like just kind of like just making off
Yeah.
the field stuff, like comments, like he's not a bad guy. It's not Adolf Hitler we're
It
talking
just
about,
got tiring. It was too much
but
all the
it's
time.
tiring. It's like, dude, you're 25 years old. You're
Yeah.
worth $100 million. You're a wide receiver for the Giants. Act like it. Like just grow up. Crap like that. I don't think they mind trash talk on the field. And so he's got a presence that we really like, and he played well, and we needed that. We couldn't go through like a developmental year where you look like absolute crap.
Yeah.
We needed hope, and he, in that position, and he brought it. I
Yeah.
love that. And what do you see? How do you feel about him going forward? Do you think like I only see
Well,
bright skies for this guy, man?
yeah, and you got to really, it's making me think too. We got to bring up the 2021 draft class too, right? Because, what's his name? Ojulari, it's Kayvon's running mate there on the line because I'm kind of thinking about them as a duo, like kind of like
Yeah.
OC and Tuck. It's starting to feel like, do we have something there
Yeah.
with
Yep.
Kayvon? And when those guys were in together, and I'd like to know the stat of how often they were both on the field together because they
Not
missed some
often.
games. I know. I would love
Ojulari
to
missed a
see
lot of
that.
games.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would love to see next year if they can come in healthy and hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Especially when you, to your point, when you don't have linebackers, you need it. But at the same point, if they can start to get consistent pressure with just that front four, it's going to take
Mhm.
some pressure off the linebackers. It takes pressure off the secondary,
Yeah.
and it's going to allow them to do a lot more things. A completely different thought just popped in my head thinking about what they can do defensively. It's making me wonder if we're going to have our defensive coordinator next year. But
I know.
that's
He's got
another
a
one.
second interview with the Colts, and
Yeah.
listen, I mean, what I'm just hanging my hat on is that it seems like teams like to hire offensive minds for the most part. You look at Houston, though; they just signed to D'Amico Ryans,
DeMarco.
I believe,
Yeah.
as their HC, and I hope they come to realize that Wink Martindale's a horrible human being, and that he should never be a head coach anywhere.
There you
And
go.
but no,
So,
I love the guy. I'm not going to worry about that. I feel when I think of listen, man, we could lose Wink, we could lose Kafka, and we could
yeah.
lose to as head coaching position, and we could lose Tierney. Is that his name?
Yeah.
He's a quarterbacks coach. He's
Yep.
interviewed for OC positions at least at one team at least.
Yep.
So
You're
there's a bunch,
absolutely right.
but you know what? I'm not going to worry about that stuff because listen, I think they did a great job. Shane and especially Dable did a great job of assembling this year's staff. I'm just going to have confidence that that they'll be able to do the same, and that Dable maybe if he loses his OC, that maybe he takes over the play calling. And I wouldn't want. I like him just to be the head coach, but I'm not going
I'm
to worry
sure
too
he's got
much about that
friends
yet.
from Buffalo he can bring down too.
Yeah, let's see. We got to keep rating Buffalo, right?
Yeah, right.
And Kansas City, but
Seriously. So help me
Evan,
out here real quick because Kayvon
yeah,
on the defensive side, you know, I feel like I absorbed a lot of his snaps. He was top of mind to me. But I will say that I have a shortcoming on the other line, on that offensive line. There just been a lot of moving parts with that Giants offensive line.
yeah, as
And I
always.
will say, as a fantasy player, I'm sometimes guilty of overdoing it on red zone at 1 o'clock and not locked into every Giants play. So I need you to tell me how you felt about Evan Neal all year, and even in general, more so the progression of the offensive line from September to now. What you thought about that?
You know what? It did get better. Here's a big problem of theirs is that they're always injured. And when you have guys, and a lot of them are young guys like Evan Neal, and Evan Neal, I don't think he missed all that much time, but you had Shane Lemieux who missed, looked like he was going to be the starting left guard. Then you had Azudu in there, who we're going to get to in a little bit, who took a spot for a little while and then he got injured. You had who's the other one that I'm forgetting? There's another guard too that I'm forgetting. Who was also Ben. Okay, well Ben Bredesen. He had missed some time, but I felt like the team was in the beginning of the season. The offensive line was actually getting better and better. Not that it needs to be upgraded, the interior of the line, but I felt like with consistency when they were playing together, and that is going from left to right. That's going from Andrew Thomas, Bredesen, who actually this is his second year on the Giants, was getting better and better. He was actually looking pretty damn good. He was their best left guard this year. And then you had Feliciano at center. I wanted to see Gates play more center. I wanted to see that, but Feliciano was healthy and he did play. You had Glauniski, I think is how you pronounce his name. He was a free agent they picked up, and he performed okay. I thought he was going to perform better this year than he did. He performed okay, but when you had those four guys and Neal, they were getting better as the season was going along, and the weakness really kind of like was Neal, I'd say all along. And so Neal, like I'm not worried yet, but I'm not like Andrew Thomas. I always felt like he was a better prospect, to be honest, than Evan Neal. He was a more complete
Yeah.
product coming out of college, and I felt like I was never really all that worried about him. And a lot of people forget that it was the first half of his first year where he was horrible, Andrew Thomas. The second half of the year, he was actually a lot better. It was like a light went on, and he was a lot better. And then the second year, he was looking great. Last year, he was looking great, and then he got injured. I forgot what the injury was, but he missed a substantial amount of time. And then this year, played like a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
And I think Evan Neal. The good thing about Evan Neal is that he is like Andrew Thomas. This guy takes his craft seriously. He works really hard. He does a lot of studying. So I expect that next year, I don't know when, next year, I think you're going to see like a real Evan Neal that we expect. And if he's like that, we've got our two tackles like that. Holy cow, man! Holy cow! But
I was so relieved to see them be able to run the ball again this year. Like this was the first, I
oh
mean,
yeah, he
since
was fine in the
Barkley's
run
rookie
game.
year, but Barkley's
Mhm.
rookie year, they ran the ball because Barkley was phenomenal, not because the offensive line was good. So
Right.
it was nice to see them at least have a little bit of continuity and at least be good enough where they could play like a balanced offense as far
Yeah.
as it wasn't just always Barkley. It was Daniel Jones running. It was Barkley running. They were doing a little
Yeah.
bit of throwing. And I do feel like that was because the offensive line finally afforded them some
Yeah.
opportunity to do
Yeah.
that.
And the offensive line, I think all along and this has been a problem with the Giants for a while, is that a lot of times their offensive line is just getting beat up, and they were never that good to begin with. But now these guys, like I said, when they had consistency, when their guys were healthy, they got to play together. They got better and better. Now that interior of the line, and we'll get to some of these younger, like Azuda later. That interior of the line needs to be upgraded. Like it was getting blown up in the beginning of the year. It did get better, but I also think that it had to do with like the quality of the competition was maybe not as good, but they did get better as they went along. But we need to upgrade center and maybe right guard. And you got like three guys at left guard, like between Lemieux, if they keep him again next year, Lemieux, Bredesen, and Azudu, who are going to be, can battle it out for left guard or maybe both guards, but they got to get another, good prospect this next draft. I'm not crazy. I don't really want to go free agency again for offensive line, but I really want to see them get like a guy who can come in and start on the interior this year at center or guard, whatever it is. They need to. But Evan Neal was a weakness on an offensive line last year. On pass protection, not good. It wasn't good. And, he needs to, but like I said, he's a high character guy who, takes it very seriously. So that makes me feel good. And I think he's going to figure it out. I do think he's going to figure it out. But they really need to make sure they coach him up and I am high on it. I am high on it, but I'm a little nervous, I gotta say. All right, let's move on to Wandale Robinson, who unfortunately now we're starting the run of the torn ACLs for the draft class. There's like at least four in this
That's
draft
crazy.
class, and it stinks because listen, mea culpa, or just to admit to everyone, I was never really all that high on this pick in the second round, and it's not against Wandale Robinson. Well, it is. It's like I like the player. I didn't like him being picked in the second round. His height just scares the crap out of me, and his torn ACL has got nothing to do with his height. I'm just afraid in the future. Hopefully, he comes back fully healthy. I'm just afraid in the future this dude's going to get blasted running over the middle. He's 5'7". He's going to get blasted, or 5'8". He's going to get blasted by 6 foot, 235-pound linebackers and safeties, and that worries me. But the dude was getting better and better, and he had this one really good game. It was the game where he tore his ACL against Detroit, where he had, I forgot the amount of receptions. He had a lot of receptions, a lot of targets, and he had over 100 yards. And yet you could start to see why they drafted this guy and how they were going to use him. And he should be a problem, in the NFL. So I always liked Wandale Robinson. I was scared drafting him in the second round, but
It was a head scratcher at the time because he's the exact same, coming out of the draft, you're looking at the exact same player as Kadarius Toney. So you're thinking to yourself, like, why
yeah,
would they take the second round pick on Wandale? They got Toney, it's the same guy, but you knew that there was a lot going on behind the scenes with Toney.
yeah, you
And,
could
the writing was
you could feel
obviously
it.
on the wall, even as soon as draft night, that Toney wasn't going to be there the whole
Yeah,
season.
and Tony's got a higher ceiling, man. But dude, even in Kansas City, he can't stay healthy.
No,
It's crazy.
I agree
It's
he's got the
crazy.
higher ceiling, but I will say I came to like Wandell by the end of the year. He was
Mhm,
he was developing a rapport with Daniel
mhm.
Jones by the time when he did get
Yeah,
hurt. And I agree with you on the size. Yeah, I love the speed because the Giants needed that speed. They need
oh
his
yeah, he's a
speed.
problem.
Um,
Hmm.
it
For the
feels
defense.
like in the end, maybe it was a little bit of a reach for where they got him. Maybe they could have got him even, in the third round. I don't know. But I like what he showed, and
Mm.
if they get
I do too.
a real number one, I would love, like, if Wandale Robinson is the slot receiver for them with,
Hmm.
you know, I don't even freaking know who the hell it's going to be for them. But with a real number one, and give
Yep.
me a healthy Sterling Shepard, or even this Hodgins kids is the number two, and Wandell in the slot, I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. I'm
Yeah.
okay
Me
with
too,
that.
man. I think we're seeing the formulation of and don't get me wrong, I'm not down on Wandale. Like I said, like his size scares me, but I also recognized what he can bring to the table. And this guy could be a really, really good player. And I think the type of offense that Dable and Kafka was running over in Kansas City, he's a fit for that. And I am excited about him. So torn ACL, he got what scares me is that he got the torn ACL in the middle of the season. I forgot the week. It might have
October
been
or
like week
November,
8.
right?
Yeah, so listen, I mean, he's probably not going to be able to see the field, I think, until October, November of this year. And even then, is he going to be the same player?
Yeah.
Like for this year, like torn ACLs, what I hear a lot is that, yeah, you can be on the field in a year, but it's really the second year where you really get
Burst.
your motor skill back, if you will, or your full dexterity, whatever it is. I also heard someone else point out and that this was a clean tear of the ACL, which is apparently like the ideal tear because it's easier and
To
faster to
heal it.
heal,
Yeah.
whatever that means exactly. I guess
Yep.
there's no dirt and used oil in there.
I agree with you. Like, I don't think he will be effective if he's being put on the field in a situation where he's going to absorb the defense's number one corner or something like that. He's
Hmm.
never going to be that guy.
Yeah.
But again, like in the slot or as the number three with two
Oh
really
yeah.
good guys in
Yeah.
front
Yeah.
of him,
Yeah.
I think he can really play a role. Like maybe a
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd, different makeup, but
Yeah.
that kind of production.
Right. And listen, I firmly believe that eventually winning Super Bowls and being a consistently good team that's always striving, that always has a legitimate shot to make the playoffs. It's not just about having the number one. You have to have the other receivers too. You want
Role
to have a
players.
really good slot receiver. You
Yep.
want to have the good, receiver opposite the number one. You want to have a good backup. You want to also have a good running game.
You need the big
So
physical red zone target.
yeah,
You're right.
and
It's all roles, right? You got to
it,
put pieces of the puzzle.
yeah, it's the same thing how we were building up this defense when people were saying, "Oh, we don't have any edge rushers." When we first started this rebuild, like in 2019. Meanwhile, we're stockpiling, the
Picks.
middle of the defensive line,
Yeah.
and also a lot of safeties in the secondary too. Point being that get what you can get when you can get it. Get the good quality, even if it's a slot receiver, and you got to wait for the other guys for your opportunity to either draft or sign like a number one. So I'm glad. I do like Wandale, I do, and I am really high on him. Unfortunately, I think we may not see the real Wandale until 2024, just because he tore this ACL in the middle of last year.
Yeah, it's a
You
fair
know,
point.
um, but yeah, man, I have high expectations for him, and I'm really, really excited about him. And dude, he's just a high character kid. I love him, man. I love his character. And believe me, if he's healthy, fully back from that ACL, I'm really high on the dude. Okay, third round. So we had Joshua Zudu, who was an offensive guard out of UNC, and Cordell Flott, cornerback out of LSU, who last year, 2022, I think was voted most improved player in all of NCAA football, regardless of conference, regardless of division. He was voted most improved cornerback or player, one or the other. Anyway, so Izudu, we touched on him before, interior lineman. This guy did see, and that's what I like about this coaching staff. All these guys are seeing the field. It's also kind of a necessity too, because the Giants are very, very thin in so many areas. But Izudu is someone they were very, very high on. This guy, he flashed a lot. First of all, running game, very, very good. He was playing left guard, but beside Andrew Thomas, very, very good in the running game, and he was already known to be that way coming out of UNC. That was his strength, but he's got the speed. He's got the speed and the feet to get a lot better in pass protection at left guard. It gives me a lot. It gives me a lot of hope at left guard because I did like how Ben Bredesen played. Um, he's not like going to be a top tier guy, but man, I thought he might have been the best left guard we've had in a long time. So I don't know how much that is, but I like the potential competition next year for Ben Bredesen and Josh Azudu, who Azudu's ceiling is definitely higher than Bredeson's. And I think this guy he was raw coming out of UNC. I think this guy could wind up really legitimately being a good starting left guard for us. Um, and he did flash. Like I said, he played very well in the run game, and he got better as the season went on because he was being brought in. Even when Bredesen was healthy, Azudu was being brought in on snaps. He was being brought on some snaps to play, and he was getting better in pass protection. Bredesen's ahead of him, but Azuda's got the higher ceiling. I'm really high in this guy, and I haven't given up on Shane Lemieux, who before he got injured in at the end of training camp was looking like he was going to be the starting left guard. And this is a guy who came in again like Azudu, came out of fifth round a few years ago out of Oregon, was already built very well for the running game. He was very good in the run game, but he was crap in the pass game, Lemieux. And this last summer, this previous summer, he was doing very well in the passing game. So another smart player who's always had a reputation for working hard. So I don't know if Lemieux is going to be around next year. I assume he is because I think there's a spot for each of these guys, just needing depth on the interior. I'm excited to see these three guys grow, but we do need another young guy out of the draft to compete either at center or guard. And
It's making
Cordell,
me think. It's making me
go ahead.
think about we we talk in the NFL now about having these defensive lines and these pass rushers almost to the point where some of these teams like a Baltimore or the Giants in the past, they almost have these rotations of 6, 7, 8 defensive linemen that are all playing meaningful snaps throughout the game. They're all trying to keep them fresh for the fourth quarter. And I
Philadelphia.
mean, yeah, right. And the Giants are far away from this, but it
Yep.
feels like if they keep on hitting on these, and not that Evan Neal's a hit to your point, but they're collecting and amassing a
Hmm.
group, an offensive line group that because of the injuries, because of
Hmm.
there's just
Yeah.
maybe a lot of depth there. And maybe we'll go into the season and be able to depend on 8 or 9 guys to get the job done, which would just be such a huge improvement over where we've been with this offensive line for so many years now.
Joe, that's something I think about a lot with this offensive line is that I think there's a chance that all of a sudden next year, if these guys are healthy, there's like a quantum leap in the quality of this offensive line. And like I said, it's not something we can count on. We still have to continue to bring in young talent, through the draft, or if they want to do free agency, whatever. But I don't necessarily expect that. Every year they should be drafting at least one offensive lineman. In every draft class, in my opinion, because no matter what, on any given offensive play, you always have to have 5 offensive linemen out there. And even if you have 5 studs, you're never going to be able to keep them together for long.
Yep.
So, but I wouldn't be surprised if, Azudu was healthy, if Bredesen's healthy, and if Lemieux is healthy, that just those three guys alone for the guard positions, I wouldn't be shocked if all of a sudden whammo, between development and staying healthy, that wow, all of a sudden we have an interior line. I wouldn't be shocked, and I'm really excited about these guys next year. I'm not hanging my hat on it. Like I said, you need to bring in another guy at least, but I'm really excited about it. Cordell Flott, he saw more and more time the second half of the season. And this is a guy who was known. I just mentioned before he was voted like most improved player in like all of college football in 2022. This is a guy who was very, very raw. He's very thin, but he's tall and lanky too. And man, you saw that on he had for what I recall, he flashed quite a bit. He flashed quite a bit. He's got some ways to go, but he was known to be like a high end prospect. And like, but he's going to need some time. And they were using him anyway, because again, due to injuries. But second half of the year, he was getting some time there, not just in the slot, which is what he's expected to play or compete for, but on the outside as well. And there were 2 plays that I mentioned to Joe before we started the show. Um, that I think definitely caught my eye, and that was one was the second one was the Minnesota Vikings playoff game, and it was against
Osborne.
Osborne. It was the second to last defensive play. The last defensive play was where Kirk Cousins threw that like short pass, like 2-yard pass to Hawkinson, and McKinney tackled him, and the game was basically over at that point. The play before that, Cousins threw a beautiful pass to Osborne going across, slanting across the middle. It was a beautiful pass, and it was in his hands. Basically, the same time that it was in his hands, Flott, who was trailing behind him, it mirrored him really, really well. People go back and see that play. It was really impressive to watch Flott do this, to turn with him, and because when he first slanted, when he first made the sharp turn, Osborne, that is, I thought it was like, okay, they're gonna get a first down. We're gonna have to bite our nails even shorter now. Flott caught up to him and got his hand in there at the last second to break it up. It was a beautiful play. And then the week before that against Philadelphia, it was the Week 18 game. And again, the Giants sat most of the starters. He had a really nice. He did a good job against AJ Brown. I mean, I don't know how much that counts because I do think the Eagles just held back a lot. They were just doing what they needed to do just to get through that game, and they weren't going too crazy. But still, I don't care. It's AJ Brown, and he played really well. I remember he had one particular play that was really good against AJ Brown, where it was nice pass breakups. So I'm encouraged by this guy, and I love this coaching staff. I think this is the coaching staff that really does do a good job of developing their young players, unlike unfortunately some of the previous ones we had. So
Yeah.
I'm really high on both of these guys. Now Wandale Robinson. I said I was critical of before. These two third round picks last year's draft. I was like, oh my God, I wanted a guard and I wanted a cornerback, and I had my eye on two other guys. They picked these guys, and I was like, oh, come on, give me a break. I'm very excited about these guys for next year.
Yeah, I thought that was good value in the third round. And I mean, just the fact that Plot
Yeah.
was playing
Mhm.
in that Minnesota game in that last drive is a testament, obviously, to how the coaching staff felt about him
Yeah,
by the end of the season.
I think on that last drive, I think Wick Martindale had he might have had like seven guys in the secondary back there
Yeah,
between
yeah.
cornerbacks and safeties. So, and it was the
And our
right move.
secondary is like, it's not horrible, it's not
No, it's
great.
not.
It's kind of
It
in
needs
the
to be
middle.
upgraded.
But
Yeah.
I feel like he's got an opportunity to carve himself out a legit role if he keeps on developing.
Him, and there's another guy too who I don't know, man. I don't know if they're going to give up on him because it's like 2 years in a row he's been injured. But man, beginning of last year, he was looking really good. Aaron Robinson, who was drafted
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Michigan, right? Is he a Michigan guy?
No, I don't think.
Why
No.
do I
Aaron
think he was
Robinson.
Michigan?
He was like University of Central Florida or
Okay.
University of Southern Florida, one or the
Okay.
other. And the dude's a physical. He's basically a press man slot corner. But they also were playing him on the outside, and he's doing well. Unfortunately, injury. I don't remember what the injury was, and he's gone for the rest of the season. Probably a torn ACL. Don't quote me on that, but if I had to guess, if I just that would be my guess. Fourth round, Daniel Bellinger, Dane
Yes.
Belton. One dude really sticks out here, and that is Daniel Bellinger. Uh, Impactful, in my
The
opinion.
last
Not
one of
as
the list, right? We're looking at this list.
Yes,
This is probably the last relevant
yeah,
for this year, anyways.
yes.
The last relevant performance of this draft class, and it's not a bad thing. Fourth round. I mean,
No, not at
I was
all.
super excited about what Bellinger was by the end of the year, based on what their whole tight end situation was going into the season.
Yeah, listen, man. I like to have someone like an Evan Ingram at tight
Yeah,
end. That's great, but you have to have. If I'm going to have someone like an Evan Ingram, like that type of player, um, he's got to be paired up with a real tight end. That is one who can block. And when I say just block, I'm not into tight ends not starting tight ends who only block. Like in my opinion, you're a tight end. You got to be able to
yeah.
block passing game, running game, and you also need to be able to go out there
Yeah.
and have a
In
pair of hands and
2022,
catch some
you got to be able
balls.
to catch the ball.
Dude, yeah, that's what a tight end is supposed to do. I want both, so I don't mind. I think like an Evan Ingram is a nice luxury to have, but he's got to be on the other side of that line. There's got to be a real tight end like a Daniel Bellinger. And when they picked this guy, I'm like, dude, I like this pick. There was another guy who I wanted just a little more who went to Dallas, but it didn't matter. It was Jake Ferguson out of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They're basically the same player, and I was just more familiar with Ferguson. But I'm like, oh, Daniel Bellinger. Okay, I like this guy out of San Diego.
Bellinger was getting some really relevant targets by the end of the year, which I
He's a
love to
relevant
see.
player.
And he's got the
Relevant player.
size. What I'm trying to figure out though with the tight end is Dable and tight end, because I'm thinking back to Buffalo And Buffalo's got Dawson Knox these last couple of years. And Knox has been really interesting, right? Because he's kind of
Oh yeah.
inconsistent. Like he gets
Mhm.
some big, great games. Then he kind of disappears for, yes, sir, Justin. Then he kind of
Justin.
disappears for a little bit. And then, like, you never really saw Buffalo. Like, you don't see Buffalo go three tight ends, in a running back
Mm.
package on a 4th and short. They spread the field. So I'm kind of trying to figure out Dable and his offense in general, what he wants from his tight end. I don't really
I,
know what it is.
I think they like using the tight ends. There were quite a few packages there where the Giants actually had, believe it or not, it was either the 6th or 8th most efficient red zone offense in the entire league. Now, it doesn't mean that they put up the 6th or 8th most points. I think they were middle of the pack in terms of actually, believe it or not, points scored, even though it didn't feel like it as Giants fans. But they were very efficient when they got to the red zone.
I
And
feel
he
like that
did
had a lot to do with Daniel Jones's running this year.
It did 100% because he did have like 7, I think 7 rushing tight ends.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it was a threat, but they used the tight ends a lot. Bellinger had touchdowns this season, as
Yes.
did Cager, another tight end as well. So they like using the tight end. So Bellinger came in 4th round pick. I love this dude. When he was out with that gruesome eye injury, where there was a chance where he was going to lose that eye, either lose the eye or just not, or he was going to like lose vision in the eye, something like that, and he probably was going to be out of football. Didn't happen, thank God. But when he was out for like 6 weeks, it was no, and I knew this was going to happen. And the Giants have no room to spare, talent anyway. When he was out, I knew the offense was going to take a hit in production because he had been extremely important in the running game. He is a really good blocker, and he's also pretty good in pass blocking too. He's not bad. He's good. His strength is run blocking, but he's a good he's good at picking up
Correct me
the
if I'm wrong. Where so when they drafted him,
mhm.
going into training camp, going into week 1, who was their starting tight end week 1?
He was
So did he won? Who did he beat? Was there a veteran?
not
Like they had
much.
Kyle Rudolph last year,
Oh
right?
no, there were 2 free agents. Was it Akins? Was that his
Yeah,
name?
Aiken from Houston or
And then,
something like
and there was
that.
some other guy who's been floating around for like 10 years. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'm like, these guys aren't going to make it. I don't care if Bellinger, these guys. I'm like, please, draft a tight end. We can't have these 2 guys. It was Akins and some other dude. I forgot who it was. Who I think was on Washington and scored a touchdown against us last year. Big tall dude. I forgot who it was. But
I
I'm
don't know.
like, please,
Bellinger was a great story and kind of like an underrated
I
story for
love
the
him.
year for the
I love
Giants.
this dude, and his dad's pretty popular on Twitter now with Giants fans because he's always like praising his son. It's pretty cool. And but Bellinger is a really good all around player, and when he was out for 6 weeks, his presence was missed. You can tell like in the run game, but also he became a really really nice safety valve
Yeah,
for
I
Daniel
agree.
Jones. He's a young guy who is like I said, like he can go out 3rd down and you can trust him to find soft spots in the zone, and he's got good hands. He's reliable. He's reliable. So I loved it. Dane Belton is actually he might have actually had the most interceptions on our defense. Believe it or not, he had
Wow.
2 interceptions. We need ball hawks. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But Dane Belton, that's what he was known for at Iowa. That's what he's known for in Iowa was being a ball hawk. So I don't see this guy as I think he's got starting potential. I really hope they're able to keep Julian Love. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, but I love the safety tandem of Julian Love and Xavier McKinney. But
Yeah.
Dane Belton, I think there's a chance that he could grow into that role of being another starting safety. I'm not convinced about that, but I thought for a rookie, I thought he wasn't in there all the time, obviously, but he played more when McKinney was down, and he went in there more. But he does have a bit of a nose for the ball. He does, he can play the run game pretty well too. So he's got a chance to be an all around safety there. And for a 4th round pick, I was pretty happy with the dude. My expectations are tempered. I think he is going to be like a role player, but then again that's how I saw Julian Love back in the day, and Julian Love,
He's
was
progressed.
wound up being a really good starter for us.
Yeah, yeah. And then when we get down to these last,
Let's
give
go
a
through
real
these
quick
guys real
summary
quick.
on the
Well, you know what,
the
Micah
ACL
McFadden, real
brothers.
quick.
Yeah,
Micah McFadden, 5th round pick, actually stayed healthy. There's really not much I can say on this guy. This guy is role is going to be, you know, this guy's role is going to be, backup and maybe a good backup. I don't think he was known to be a guy who can a linebacker who was successful in college in blitzing. Um, but I'm just listen. We need to upgrade that linebacking core across the spectrum. Period. End of
Agreed.
story. But I think Micah McFadden did fine as a rookie, and I think like Dane Belton, I think he definitely has a ceiling that's gonna be like at best like good backup where if your starter goes down, okay, we got McFadden. He's not bad. It's not going to be trash. All right, the torn ACL brothers, the triplets over here, because these are the guys that really had torn ACL since the beginning of the year for the most part. Uh, DJ Davidson, defensive tackle out of Arizona State, actually was playing pretty darn well. If people remember him at all, I do. Was playing pretty darn well for like the first 4 games of the year at defensive tackle, and he was getting snaps and he was playing pretty darn well, a lot better than I thought he would. And then he went down, I think in London, I think it was he
Yeah,
went down.
I believe so. Yep.
And you know what? After that, that was basically their depth was gone. Well, their depth was gone really on the interior, and poor Dex and poor Leo had to play like 95% of snaps the rest of the year. So
They earned their
uh,
money.
yeah, they certainly did. And then Marcus McKeithen, this guy I read a lot. He tore his ACL in the summer. Before he tore his ACL in the summer, I was hearing a lot of really good things about this guy. Again, offensive guard out of UNC, just like Azudu. These
Right.
two guys played together. I think they went down to see Azudu to scout Azudu, and they started really liking McKeithen a lot too. They took him in the 5th round. I was hearing a lot of glowing reports about him before he tore his ACL. So, I don't know if he's going to be around next year because they're going to be looking at, I'm sure they'll be bringing in at least one more draft pick this year on the interior line. Maybe McKeithen won't make the cut. I don't know. But listen, I was hearing a lot of glowing reports about him last year. Darian Beavers. This one really hurt because, listen, maybe he was going to wind up stinking, but this is a guy who is probably going to have that starting Mike position, middle linebacker position.
It's so pitiful
Um,
to think that their 6th-round pick was going to walk into that starting position.
I know it's ridiculous, but I was actually really excited about him because I like Darian Beavers. This is a guy who I thought should have went like in the 4th round. So listen, I'm not saying Darian Beavers. Oh, we don't have to draft or sign a middle linebacker because we got Darian Beavers coming back. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I do have some hope, and I did have some hope all along. I think it's somewhat realistic that this guy actually could turn into a starter. I'm not saying this year. It sucks that he got injured in the summer and he lost a year of development. Who knows? Maybe he's not even around next year. Maybe they wind up cutting him. I don't know. But he was probably going to be the starting inside linebacker. And this is a dude who's known to be able to uh, bring the hammer on the run defense and also to be able to blitz from the inside as well and to blitz from the outside as well. Play a little edge. So I was
And they
excited
need,
about
I'll be
Darren
honest, the
Beavers.
run defense was probably one thing that probably performed
It
worse than
stunk.
expected.
It
Yeah,
stunk.
it stunk.
Yeah,
It
it
was
stunk.
bad.
And it stinks because Leo and Dex were playing a lot. I mean, they were playing with well over 90% of the snaps. And there's only whenever they were taken out, there was a noticeable difference.
Yep.
There was just a huge dip in talent behind them, and then there was just no middle linebacker help. And that's nothing against Landon Collins, who we'll get to in a little bit. But
Yeah.
all right, so let's talk about. All right, so yeah, the 20 ACL again, 4 players out of this class: DJ Davidson, Marcus McKeith, and Darian Beavers. Some of these guys didn't even make it out of training, not train, yeah, out of the summer. Um, you know, they didn't even make it out of the summer without tearing their ACL. And then unfortunately had Wandale Robinson in the middle of the year. All right, so let's get to the free agents. Isaiah Hodgins, Richie James, Fabian Moreau, Landon Collins, John Feliciano, Glowinski. Who do you want to talk about first?
Let's
We'll
talk
wrap it up
about the
after
wide
these guys.
receivers because it's kind of like the shiny position to talk
The
about, and there's
most
a lot to
impactful.
unpack here. So
Yep.
let me ask you this question about the wideouts right off the bat, and I'll throw Sterling Shepard because I feel like to understand the Giants, and they got to know what's going on with Sterling Shepard because he
What did he
will
have?
have a role if he is healthy. And I feel like there's a loyalty there where he'll be there if he wants to be there and he's
I'll sign
healthy.
him for vet minimum. I'd bring him
Yeah.
back for vet minimum.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. How about you? What do you say? Just strictly about him. Would you bring him back for vet minimum or a little more? Would you bring him back?
I think he's
It's
worth
still a
it for the
1 year
locker
contract,
room,
nothing
and
crazy.
he's been so that guy for all the injuries, man. He keeps on ticking. Even the
He's
beginning of
golden.
this year, he was
He's
looking
golden.
great.
He was DJ, and if DJ's back, and I assume he's going to be, I don't care, even if it's not DJ. Like any quarterback's going to have a good connection with him. Sterling Shepard's a professional. He knows what he's doing, and I have no doubt that if he comes back to the Giants on a team friendly contract, that I have no doubt that if his knee's healthy, he's going to step in there and he's going to look pretty good. I don't want him as a starter anymore, and nor should
No,
he.
he's got to be
You
their
can't.
number 4 realistically now,
Yeah,
because
no,
you want
absolutely.
Wandale to be in the slot and you need
Hmm.
2 legit guys in front of Wandale. So you're
Yeah,
really looking at Sterling being like your number 4, which
he'd
is
be
kind of
great
bums
there.
me out for him because
Yeah,
he deserves better. But he just got raw deals with the injuries. But I
it's
love the guy. I love his character, and I do think he has a role on the team.
yeah.
But he's not. I mean, they need to, as we were talking before. I'm looking at Isaiah Hodgins, and it's a great story. And I'd like to
Yeah,
see him come back. I'll be really curious to see like what type of years and money they got to give him.
I think he's actually signed.
You're right. He is signed
I
another
think
year.
he is,
You're right.
but it's like, hey, do you just want to like? But I think it's some sort of like minimum deal.
Yeah, like he's gonna
So
want
like,
more, I would imagine, right? Based
yeah,
on what he
I
did.
know, but I think he signed something like that signed, or they've got an option they can pick up that's friendly to them, something like that. Like I don't think Hodgins is like an out and out free agent. I don't believe. I
The
don't believe
problem is, and I don't know how the draft class is for wide receivers. The free agency
it's
class
pretty
for
good.
wide receivers is not very good this year.
I'm not. I'm not
It
gonna.
stinks.
And I know I hear you. It is, and I'm not gonna. I'd let whether it's when it comes to the draft, I want it to fall to us. Like I don't want to if there's not a guy like there's probably going to be a run of wide receivers in the first round before our pick number 25 comes up, and if a guy that we like or the front office likes isn't there for the value that they feel at number 25, I'm not going to reach. Like listen, this team has other needs as well. I'm not saying we can't. I'm not saying we shouldn't bring in more wide receivers, and that we certainly should early in the draft as well. But listen, we also need middle linebacker. That it really hurt the defense not
Let me
having
ask
like
you
a
one
middle
more
linebacker.
wideout question.
Hmm.
Darius Slayton.
I bring him back too. It
As where
depends on
do
the
you want him
price.
to fall on the depth chart? Like for the Giants
Hmm.
to have an effective wide receiver group and an
Hmm.
improved group over this year,
Hmm.
where does Slayton have to fall on that depth chart? Can he be your number 2?
He could be. I think. Listen, I think Hodgins could be the number two, and maybe he could be like a number three, not as a slot number three, but I mean
Right.
as like but here's the thing: is that I don't want to overpay for guys out
Yeah.
there who aren't on the team, who just aren't worth it. A
Yep.
lot of these guys who are out there are like number two wide receivers at best. I'd
And
rather
they get
go.
crazy money.
I know I'd rather go lower end and keep these guys in house like Hodgins, like Slayton. A lot of Giants fans have hated on Slayton, and listen, the guy's never going to be a number one wide receiver, and he's probably never going to be a number two wide receiver. But I'd rather have guys who are. I'd rather have a slew of number three wide receivers than overpaid number two wide receivers and
Yeah. The problem is they need a
or a
real
bunch of
number
like number.
1.
Yeah,
They need a number 1. And it makes Slayton
absolutely.
better. It will make Wandale better.
Uh huh.
It'll make Hodgkins better. But I mean,
Right.
like, I don't know. Do you make a run at
Look,
DeAndre
it,
Hopkins? Or are they
I'd
not
kick
ready
it.
for that? Maybe, I don't know.
My thought is that we're not ready for that yet because we're
Yeah,
not. I don't feel like we're just a wide receiver one away from.
it's a fair point.
I don't want to say from winning a Super Bowl. That shouldn't just be it. But there's so many. We have so many holes that you know, so many key holes, and we're lacking so much depth. I just don't feel like we're ready for that move yet. And but here's the thing: like, I would not mind having Isaiah Hodgins for next year. Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, Richie James, and
Wandale.
yeah, and Sterling Shepard. That's four wide receivers right there. None of them, that's four wide receivers. Wandale next year, and then you've got someone you got to bring in the draft. Someone you got to bring in the draft, whether it's first or second round, but someone you got to bring in the draft. And you can't expect this person. You can't expect this person to to just step in and be a wide receiver one immediately. But I don't know. I like that talent. I do like that talent. I want to see an improved offensive line. And I wouldn't mind getting maybe another tight end to, if they want to. I don't know about maybe not tight end, but I'd like to see another legit running back backing up Saquon if they bring him back,
Let me
or if
ask
they
you
don't
this
bring him back,
question.
we're going to need some running backs.
What position do you think they will spend the most money on? One singular player. What position will get the biggest free agent contract from the Giants this offseason?
I got to check to see who's out there.
I
You know
know
what?
that's fair.
I'll give you one. I'll give you a cornerback.
Yeah.
Fabian Moreau, who I've got listed over here in my big hand. Fabian Moreau, like he was admirable, and for a dude who was picked up off the streets, off the waiver wires, once we lost Brad, once we had to cut Bradbury. Um, it stunk, but
Yeah,
he was
painful to
admirable.
watch
But
him in Philly.
yeah, yeah, oh, so painful, and that needs an upgrade. And again, there's some guys out there like an Aaron Robinson who earlier this year um, he was actually playing pretty darn well on the outside. Then he went down. I forgot what his injury was. Maybe it was ACL. But you can't count on these guys. But man, it's sort of like the offensive line. Like if you can get some of these like Aaron Robinson back, the guy's got real serious talent.
Well, the thing with
And
corner, NFC East, CD Lamb, AJ
oh
Brown,
yeah,
Devontae Smith, and
over
McLaurin.
in Washington. Yeah,
You need cover corners in that division now.
yeah. And listen, Adoree Jackson's not going to be around forever. So
Right.
he's been a great contract signing for the Giants
Yes,
for the
he
past few
was.
years. Great free agent. But listen, we need to draft young cornerbacks. And listen, I don't even mind. Listen, I don't mind signing one because I think it's just so important that if there's a good one out there, I could see them signing. I could see them signing a guy like if he's out there, a guy who can play press man, one on one man coverage. I could see that. I think that's where they put their money because it's not a very good wide receiver class.
Yeah.
But
Do you think
I'd be
that, not to veer off position, it just made me think though. Do you think Bellinger is penciled in as the starter now going forward, or do you think they would
yeah.
look to upgrade tight end?
I don't know what. Well, upgrade like it could be. They could be looking for like maybe an Evan Ingram type of guy. They're not going to be spending a first round pick on him, but they might want that like type of and people might say, oh, why don't they just keep it Evan Ingram? I really don't want Evan Ingram back.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. And I don't hate the guy. I'm happy for him. I think
He's
he's a
just
good character.
inconsistent.
Yeah, he's a good character guy. And people listen, the hands things with drops and stuff like that. I feel bad for him because listen, he was on shitty Giants teams where this team never had any room for errors. So stuff like
Yeah.
that got blown out of proportion. But they want you want to. I think if they go for a tight end, another tight end, they'd probably go for someone like that, like an Evan Ingram. Guy who just like it's a total mismatch.
Yeah.
Against linebackers. I think that's what. So I wouldn't be shocked if they do something like that. Listen, kind of need a running back too. Like
You do. You do.
if Saquon comes back, like I kind of like Gary Brightwell. I had to be honest. I wanted to see that guy get more touches.
I
He
like
looked pretty.
Breida. To be honest, I thought Breida.
Mhm.
I would see the problem with
He's
Breida
okay.
is as
No,
soon as you give Breida any touches, he gets hurt.
yeah, that's his whole history. But listen, I don't dislike Breida, but I'm just like I know what Breida is, and
They
I
keep
kind of
on
want to see
giving
an
away their
upgrade over
good
there.
backup running backs. It's weird,
Yeah,
right? Like
I want a dude
Gallman
who
was
can
good.
pound.
Gallman was a good backup. They
I
let
know.
him walk. They
Mhm.
signed Booker. He was a very good backup. Then they let him go. They kind of
Yeah.
just let those guys go, and then they seem to pick up another decent one each year for some.
Yeah, I would have liked. I'd like to see Brightwell. I thought he actually the limited touches he had this year, like the dude is like a one cut hit hole and
Yeah,
he hits
good energy
hard.
runner. Yeah,
Yeah, I like it. So listen, I'm not penciling him in, but I do want to see a guy who can take some snaps from Saquon or put two running backs out there, but a guy who can pound the hole and Saquon who could go on the outside, and make some space for him. Just change things up a little bit. But I wouldn't mind a wide receiving core next year of Hodgins. Um, Richie James coming back, possibly. But Hodgins, Richie James, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard for 1 year on like a vet minimum deal or something like that, and then Wandale Robinson, and get yourself hopefully like a nice stud wide receiver in this year's draft. I don't want to overpay for just because, dude. We don't just need starters linebacker. We
yeah.
probably need like a high end cornerback to replace Fabian Moreau, but we also need depth too, dude. We've got no depth. Like we had no starters at linebacker. This who depth of linebacker, obviously. We have no depth on the D line. we need depth. So
All right. All
that's
right.
that. But Feliciano center. I love Gates. I'd love to see Gates back as just if not at starting center, at least at he brings nice depth because he can play center pretty well. He can play guard pretty well, and he can play right tackle actually.
He's a good
So, and
clubhouse
he's a
guy too.
good clubhouse
Yep.
guy. Landon Collins, I don't mind him coming back as a backup. I don't want him as a starter. But and Gleniski with that guy. But I
I'm
think
with
he's
you.
signed for 2 more years anyway. And we can't cut him. So
Well, I
that's it,
learned a
my
lot,
friend.
my friend. This was good.
Yeah, listen, it was a wrap. This is the official wrap. New York Giants corner 2022 season. I promise. No more. Even though I do have to do my Daniel Jones episode, but listen. But that's actually more about the possible future. Anyway, that's a wrap for the New York Giants corner here at 12 Titles 2022 season. We're going to start talking about the future next week. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to cover, Joel. I'll run some ideas about you by you, I should say, and let me know too if there's anything that excites you. Or I'm
I,
thinking, I don't know, maybe we start diving into players that we might
well,
like
I want,
for
you're
draft.
more of a draft guy. I'm a free agent guy, more of a free
Mm.
agency guy. So maybe I'm going to dig into
Let's
who's
do
going to
that.
be available free agency
All
wise at
right,
each
all right, let's
position
do it.
and who's
Uh-huh.
really viable for the Giants because, to your point, there's a lot of positions of needs, but they have
Hmm.
to be really strategic about it. And so we need to know who's out there. So I'll commit
All right,
to coming next week to who's out there free agency wise for the Giants to pick from.
cool. And I'll probably on Twitter, just in the chat, I'll probably just ask you like what type of what type of players you're looking for, not just position, but like what type of player at the position. Like, do you want like you want a number one, right? So do you want the
Right.
guy to be a big body? Do you want to be more like a Devonte Adams? I know Adams isn't number one, but he was drafted to be a number one. Just like a guy who's just a great route runner. What's more important to you?
Yeah, no, it
I
makes
might ask
sense
you
because
something like that,
you
but let
got
me know
size with
what you.
Slayton, you got
Yeah,
speed with Wandale, but it's you got to fit those. You got to have the
yeah.
guy for the back shoulder throw.
And
You got to
listen,
have a guy for the slot. You got
Slayton's
to
not
have a
a
guy for the
he's
fade.
not a small guy like Slayton.
Oh,
People
Slayton's a
might
big
not
guy.
realize he's like the one guy in the team this year that can actually take at the top of the defense. But the thing is that he's not consistent enough to be able to do it. You need a real stud who can do it,
Right.
but he can do it. He's
Yeah.
done it in the past, so he is fast. And I actually heard a good quote about Darius Slayton recently. I think it was like a New York like a Giants.com beat reporter who asked Darius Slayton, "So Darius, how fast are you?" And Darius said, dude, I'm Auburn fast. Because Auburn likes its track runners for its
Yeah. Yeah.
it likes speed guys. It's known for its speed receivers. So I thought that was funny. But anyway, so maybe so I like that. Let's do that. I'll tackle some you let me know what positions you're interested in. I'll tweet you. I'll hit you up on the side and we'll talk about that. But you handle free agency and I'll handle
Draft.
draft players, and maybe we even do it just to kill time until the actual draft. Maybe we've got enough content here where we break it up each week. Like one week is wide receivers, another week cornerbacks, and another
Yeah.
week linebackers. Maybe
Yeah.
half-hour episode, something like that.
Yeah.
So
Or at least one offense, one defense episode to get two out of it right
yeah,
there.
because I was starting to think like after this one, I'm like, shit, what are we gonna do, man? We got
Oh
like
yeah.
2 weeks
Hey.
to go to draft. There's always something to talk about though.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
all right, drop the leash. I'm out of here, everyone. We're all out of here real quick. Here's the Twitter handles for me and for us and most of our compadres over here. I got to check, man. We're always like adding people. We've got some people who retire, and I got to check to see if it's updated. Also, if you can, please don't forget to like that, hit the like button, subscribe, and all that good stuff. If you go to Apple and give us a 5-star Apple review, uh, we will love you. We will love you to death. And that's it, guys. Everyone, we're out of here. Drop leash. Catch you next week. Everyone,
Next
catch you
week.
next week. Enjoy. Well, I guess we have
Nothing.
another
Nothing
episode
this
before this.
week.
Yeah, we have another episode before the Super Bowl. Man,
The worst
what's that?
sports week of the year right now.
I know. It's a perfect time to listen to New York Giants Corner to us the titles.
Love it.
All right, take care, guys.